The basics of inner peace that nobody practices anymore. Taoism. There is a strange contradiction in modern life. Humanity has never possessed more conveniences, more information, or more opportunities to connect with others. Yet countless people feel more restless than ever before. The world teaches us to move faster, think harder, compete constantly, and measure our worth through endless achievement. Every day becomes another race toward an invisible finish line that never truly arrives. Even moments meant for rest become opportunities to consume more information, compare ourselves to others, or worry about what tomorrow might bring. In such an environment, peace begins to feel like a luxury, reserved for rare vacations or special moments instead of the natural state of the human heart. The ancient Taoist sages saw this problem thousands of years before smartphones, crowded cities, and endless notifications existed. They understood that the greatest source of suffering was never the outside world itself, but the mind's inability to flow with life. Long before psychology, neuroscience, or self-help books, they observed something remarkably simple. When we fight reality, we exhaust ourselves. When we chase what constantly escapes us, we become slaves to desire. When we cling to control over everything, anxiety quietly becomes our closest companion. Modern culture celebrates complexity. Taoism celebrates simplicity. Modern society encourages constant expansion. Taoism teaches careful reduction, while the world asks, "How can I gain more?" The Tao quietly whispers, "What can you release?" And this is why many of the most powerful principles of inner peace have slowly disappeared from daily life. They are not hidden because they are mysterious. They are forgotten because they appear too simple for minds addicted to complexity. Silence feels uncomfortable. Patience appears unproductive. Contentment seems unambitious. Doing less is mistaken for laziness. Letting go is confused with weakness. Yet the Tao Te Ching repeatedly reminds us that nature accomplishes extraordinary things without strain. Rivers carve mountains not through force, but through persistence. Trees survive storms because they bend instead of resisting. Water reaches every destination because it never insists on moving in only one direction. Perhaps inner peace was never meant to be something we achieve after solving every problem. Perhaps it is something we uncover after stopping our endless resistance to life itself. In this journey, we will rediscover the forgotten foundations of Taoist wisdom, principles that countless people once lived naturally, but that modern civilization has almost abandoned. These are not complicated philosophies requiring years of study. They are timeless practices that quietly transform the way we experience each ordinary day. By the end, you may realize that peace has never been far away. It has simply been buried beneath habits that no longer serve us. Returning to simplicity, the forgotten beginning of peace. The first lesson of Taoism is surprisingly ordinary. Peace does not begin with changing the world. It begins by simplifying your relationship with it. Most people wake up carrying invisible burdens before the day even starts. Their minds immediately rush toward unfinished tasks, future worries, financial concerns, social expectations, memories of yesterday, and fears about tomorrow. Before breakfast, the mind has already traveled hundreds of miles away from the present moment. The Taoist master would ask a simple question: what burden exists right now, in this exact breath? Usually the answer is none. The body is breathing. The floor supports your feet. The morning light enters the room. Life is quietly unfolding, yet the mind refuses to stay where life actually exists. This is the first habit almost nobody practices anymore, returning to what is immediately real. Ancient Taoists spent countless hours observing nature because nature never abandons the present moment. A mountain does not worry about becoming taller tomorrow. A river does not regret the path it followed yesterday. Bamboo does not compare its growth with neighboring trees. Everything fulfills its nature without psychological struggle. Human beings possess extraordinary intelligence, but they also possess imagination capable of creating endless suffering. We imagine conversations that never happen. We rehearse failures that never arrive. We replay mistakes that cannot be changed. We construct entire futures based on fears rather than reality. Gradually, we stop living inside life itself and begin living inside thought. The Tao teaches that thought is a useful servant but a terrible master. Consider how much unnecessary complexity fills modern life. Closets overflow with clothes rarely worn. Homes accumulate objects that once promised happiness but now quietly collect dust. Digital devices constantly demand attention. Schedules become so crowded that people forget what rest even feels like. The more we accumulate externally, the harder it becomes to feel internally spacious. This is why simplicity is not merely about minimal possessions, it is about reducing unnecessary mental movement. The Taoist approach asks us to examine every attachment carefully. Does this desire genuinely improve life? Does this worry solve anything? Does this argument deserve continued energy? Does this expectation create peace or destroy it? Every unnecessary attachment consumes attention. Attention is life itself. Where attention goes, energy follows. Where energy flows, character forms. The ancient masters knew that inner peace requires guarding attention with extraordinary care. Modern culture does the opposite. Entire industries compete for human attention every second. Advertisements seek desire. News seeks outrage. Social media seeks comparison. Entertainment seeks endless stimulation. The result is not simply distraction, it is fragmentation. A fragmented mind cannot experience peace because it is constantly pulled in opposing directions. Taoism therefore begins with subtraction instead of addition. Instead of asking what new habit should be adopted, it asks what unnecessary habit should be abandoned. Instead of seeking greater excitement, it seeks deeper presence. Instead of chasing extraordinary experiences, it invites complete participation in ordinary ones. Imagine drinking tea without checking a phone, walking without headphones, watching rain without photographing it, listening without planning your next response, eating without rushing, breathing without trying to improve anything. These actions seem insignificant, yet together they rebuild the forgotten ability to simply exist. This capacity has become rare. Many people believe doing nothing wastes time. The Tao suggests that constant doing often wastes life. A calm lake reflects the moon perfectly because its surface is undisturbed. Likewise, a quiet mind reflects reality clearly because unnecessary movement has settled. Simplicity creates clarity. Clarity creates peace. Peace creates wisdom. And wisdom naturally guides action without force. This is the first forgotten foundation, not becoming someone new, simply returning to what has always been present beneath unnecessary complexity. Stop fighting the current, the Taoist art of acceptance. One of the greatest misunderstandings about Taoism is the belief that acceptance means giving up. To many modern minds, accepting reality sounds like weakness, passivity, or surrender. We are taught from childhood that success belongs to those who fight harder, push further, and refuse to accept limitations. While determination certainly has its place, Taoism points toward a deeper truth. Much of human suffering comes not from life's difficulties themselves, but from our relentless resistance to what already exists. The Taoist sages observed rivers for a reason. Water encounters countless obstacles during its journey to the sea. Mountains stand in its path, massive rocks interrupt its flow, fallen trees block its direction. Yet water never argues with reality. It never wastes energy, wishing the mountain were somewhere else. Instead, it adapts. It flows around, beneath, over, or patiently through every obstacle. Eventually, even the hardest stone yields. Not because water was stronger, but because it never stopped moving in harmony with its nature. Human beings often do the opposite. We argue with yesterday, we resist the present, we fear tomorrow. Our minds become battlefields where reality and expectation constantly collide. A delayed opportunity becomes, "This shouldn't have happened." A painful conversation becomes, "They should have understood me." A personal loss becomes, "Life isn't fair." An unexpected failure becomes, "Everything is ruined." Notice how suffering quietly doubles itself. First comes the event itself. Then comes the mind's endless resistance to the event. The Tao teaches that while we cannot always prevent pain, we almost always multiply it through resistance. Acceptance does not mean approving of injustice. It does not mean refusing to improve your life. It does not mean allowing harmful behavior from others. Acceptance simply means seeing reality exactly as it is before deciding how to respond. Only when we stop arguing with facts can wisdom begin. Imagine trying to navigate through dense fog. If you spend all your energy complaining that the fog exists, you remain lost. If you calmly acknowledge the fog, your attention shifts toward finding the safest path forward. Reality has already made its decision. Your peace depends on how you meet it. This is one of the oldest Taoist lessons, yet perhaps the least practiced today. Modern culture encourages constant resistance. Fight aging, fight silence, fight boredom, fight discomfort, fight uncertainty, fight failure, fight weakness, fight sadness, fight yourself. Soon, life becomes an endless war against experiences that naturally belong to being human. The Tao invites another possibility. Instead of asking, "How do I eliminate every difficulty?" it asks, "How do I stop making difficulty heavier than it already is?" The difference changes everything. Think about the seasons. No one becomes angry because winter is cold. No one demands that autumn immediately becomes spring. Nature changes according to its own rhythm, and we accept it without resentment. Yet, when our own lives experience seasons of uncertainty, grief, waiting, or transformation, we often believe something has gone terribly wrong. The Tao reminds us that inner life also has seasons. There are seasons for growth, there are seasons for rest, there are seasons for rebuilding, there are seasons for letting go. Trying to force perpetual summer upon the soul only creates exhaustion. Many people secretly believe peace will arrive after every problem disappears. The Tao suggests the opposite. Peace begins when we stop demanding that life become something other than what it is. This shift requires humility. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is recognizing that you are part of something infinitely larger than your own plans. The wind does not ask permission before changing direction. Rain does not consult our schedules. People change, relationships evolve. Opportunities appear unexpectedly and disappear just as quickly. Health fluctuates. Fortunes rise and fall. Nothing in existence promises permanence. The Taoist accepts this not with despair, but with freedom. Because if everything changes, then painful moments cannot last forever. Difficult emotions are like passing weather. Anxiety feels permanent while we are inside it. Grief feels endless when it first arrives. Disappointment convinces us that hope is gone. But the Tao quietly reminds us to watch the clouds instead of becoming them. Clouds never remain in one place. Neither do emotions. This is why the ancient sages rarely identified themselves with passing mental states. They would not say, "I am anger." They would recognize anger is passing through. They would not declare, "I am fear." They would notice, fear has appeared. The observer remains steady while experiences come and go. Modern psychology increasingly echoes this ancient insight, encouraging people to observe thoughts rather than become trapped inside them. The Tao understood this long before scientific language existed. Acceptance also transforms relationships. Much of interpersonal conflict comes from trying to control people who were never ours to control. We want family members to think differently, friends to behave differently, co-workers to communicate differently, partners to never disappoint us, children to become exactly what we imagined. Yet every attempt to force another person's nature creates tension. The Taoist instead begins with understanding. People act according to their level of awareness. Some respond from fear, others from insecurity, some from compassion, others from wisdom. Recognizing this does not excuse harmful behavior, but it prevents unnecessary hatred from taking root. Hatred binds us to what hurt us. Acceptance loosens those chains. Another forgotten practice is allowing silence after disappointment. Modern minds rush to immediate conclusions. This failed. I've wasted my time. I'll never recover. But the Tao teaches patience with unfolding events. A closed door today may prevent a greater mistake tomorrow. A painful ending may become the beginning of unexpected freedom. The farmer in the famous Taoist story never judged events too quickly. When his horse ran away, neighbors called it bad luck. He simply replied, "Maybe." When the horse returned with several wild horses, they called it good luck. Again he answered, "Maybe." When his son broke his leg taming one of them, everyone mourned. He answered, "Maybe." When soldiers later arrived to recruit young men for war, his injured son was spared. Again, maybe. The story reminds us that our judgments are often incomplete because we see only one page of a much larger story. Acceptance leaves room for life to reveal what we cannot yet understand. This attitude also softens perfectionism. Perfectionists rarely experience peace because reality never perfectly matches imagination. Every project contains flaws. Every relationship experiences misunderstandings. Every human being carries imperfections. The Tao asks us to stop demanding impossible standards from an imperfect world. Interestingly, nature itself is beautifully imperfect. No two leaves are identical. No river flows in a perfectly straight line. No mountain is perfectly symmetrical. Yet together they create breathtaking beauty. Perfection belongs to machines. Living things are beautiful because they change. Acceptance teaches us to value this living imperfection within ourselves. There is another subtle form of resistance that quietly steals peace: the resistance to ourselves. Many people spend years fighting their own past. They replay old mistakes, carry endless guilt, compare themselves with who they should have become. The Tao offers compassion instead. You cannot become who you are meant to be while constantly attacking who you used to be. Growth requires honesty, but it also requires kindness. A tree does not despise its smaller self from years ago. It simply continues growing. So should we. Acceptance creates an extraordinary kind of strength, not the loud strength that dominates others, not the aggressive strength that always wins arguments, but the quiet strength that remains steady when circumstances become uncertain. This strength cannot be purchased. It cannot be performed. It develops each time we stop resisting reality long enough to learn from it. Eventually, something remarkable happens. Life becomes lighter. Not because problems disappear, but because we stop carrying unnecessary battles inside our own minds. The river still encounters rocks. The wind still changes direction. The seasons still arrive. But like water flowing toward the sea, we discover that peace does not come from controlling the current. It comes from learning how to move with it. The power of empty space. Why silence has become a lost wisdom. One of the most overlooked teachings in Taoism is that what appears empty is often the most valuable part of life. Modern society trains us to admire what is visible. We celebrate possessions, accomplishments, titles, popularity, and constant activity. Our calendars become full, our homes become full, our phones become full, even our thoughts become crowded. We often assume that a full life is a meaningful life. The Tao quietly offers a completely different perspective. The usefulness of a cup is not found in the clay that forms its walls. It is found in the empty space inside. A room is useful, not because of its walls, but because of the open space they protect. A musical note only has beauty because silence exists before and after it. Without emptiness, usefulness disappears. This simple observation contains one of the deepest secrets of inner peace. Most people are not suffering because their lives lack enough activity. They are suffering because their lives lack enough space. There is no space between one responsibility and the next. No space between one notification and another. No space between one thought and the next. The mind becomes like an overcrowded marketplace where every voice demands attention at the same time. Eventually, peace has nowhere to live. The ancient Taoists understood that silence is not merely the absence of sound. Silence is the environment where wisdom becomes audible. When the surface of a lake is disturbed by constant wind, it cannot reflect the sky clearly. When the mind is constantly disturbed by endless stimulation, it cannot perceive reality clearly either. This explains why the Taoist sages often retreated into forests, mountains, and quiet valleys. Their goal was not to escape life. Their goal was to hear life more clearly. Today, many people are physically surrounded by noise, but an even greater challenge exists: internal noise. A person may sit alone in a perfectly quiet room while carrying endless conversations inside the mind. What if I fail? I should have said something different. Why did that happen? What will they think of me? What if tomorrow goes badly? One thought quickly gives birth to another. Hours pass. Nothing has actually happened. Yet the body feels exhausted, as though it has been fighting invisible battles all day. The Tao teaches that not every thought deserves attention. This may sound obvious, but very few people actually live this way. Imagine standing beside a busy road. Hundreds of cars pass every hour. You do not chase every vehicle. You simply observe them. Thoughts can be approached the same way. Some deserve attention. Many simply pass by. The problem begins when we climb into every passing thought and allow it to carry us wherever it wants. One fearful thought becomes an hour of anxiety. One memory becomes a day of regret. One criticism becomes a month of self-doubt. The Tao invites us to remain beside the road instead of entering every passing vehicle. This requires the forgotten discipline of stillness. Stillness is not inactivity. Stillness is inner stability. A tree appears perfectly still, yet beneath the ground countless roots quietly perform extraordinary work. Likewise, periods of apparent stillness often produce the deepest inner transformation. Modern culture rarely appreciates this. Rest is often treated as laziness. Silence becomes awkward. Reflection appears unproductive. Many people feel uncomfortable when nothing is happening. The moment boredom appears, they immediately reach for a phone, a television, music, conversation, or another distraction. Not because these things are harmful in themselves, but because silence has become unfamiliar. The Tao suggests something remarkable. If silence feels uncomfortable, perhaps it is because it is revealing parts of ourselves we have been avoiding. Noise often functions as escape. Silence invites encounter. When external distractions disappear, we finally meet our own minds. At first, this can feel unsettling. Hidden fears become visible, old wounds surface, unfinished grief quietly appears, restlessness becomes impossible to ignore. Many people mistake this discomfort for failure. The Taoist understands it differently. Silence is not creating these struggles. Silence is simply revealing what was already there. This revelation is the beginning of healing. A physician cannot treat an illness that remains hidden. Likewise, the soul cannot heal wounds that are constantly buried beneath distraction. Ancient Taoist practice often involved sitting quietly without forcing the mind to become empty. This is another important misunderstanding. The goal is not to stop thinking completely. The goal is to stop clinging to every thought. Clouds naturally move across the sky. The sky does not resist them. Eventually, every cloud passes. The mind works in much the same way. Thoughts appear, thoughts disappear. Peace remains available underneath them all. This understanding changes our relationship with emotions as well. Many people fear sadness because they believe it will never leave. They fear loneliness because they believe it defines them. They fear uncertainty because they assume it will last forever. The Tao reminds us that every emotional state belongs to the flow of life. Nothing remains fixed. Joy arrives. Joy leaves. Grief arrives. Grief softens. Confidence rises. Confidence falls. Everything moves. Only our attempts to freeze experience create suffering. Silence teaches us to witness this movement without panic. Another forgotten aspect of empty space is conversation. Modern communication often values speaking more than listening. People prepare responses before the other person has finished talking. Conversations become competitions rather than connections. The Tao teaches that genuine listening requires inner emptiness. If the mind is already full of opinions, assumptions, judgments, and planned replies, there is little room left to truly hear another person. Empty space becomes an act of compassion. When someone feels deeply heard, healing often begins before advice is even offered. The sage therefore values fewer words, not because words lack importance, because unnecessary words often hide unnecessary thinking. Lao Tzu observed that nature accomplishes immense work without endless explanation. The sun rises every morning without announcing itself. Flowers bloom without seeking applause. Rivers nourish entire civilizations without demanding recognition. Their quiet existence transforms the world. Human beings often believe constant expression proves significance. The Tao gently suggests otherwise. There is enormous strength in quiet confidence. A person who no longer needs to prove their wisdom often appears wiser. A person who no longer seeks constant validation becomes increasingly peaceful. Their identity no longer depends on external approval. Silence also reshapes our understanding of creativity. Many people wait for inspiration while filling every available moment with stimulation. Yet some of humanity's greatest insights have emerged during quiet walks, moments of reflection, or simple observation. The mind cannot produce fresh understanding if it never receives rest. Just as fertile soil requires periods without planting, human consciousness requires moments without constant input. This is why nature remains one of the greatest teachers in Taoism. Spend enough time watching waves reach the shore. Observe leaves moving in the wind. Listen to rain without trying to accomplish anything. Watch birds flying without naming every species. These simple experiences gradually slow the rhythm of thought. Nature operates without hurry. Eventually, the attentive observer begins to do the same. This slowing is not laziness. It is alignment. The Tao never rushes, yet everything arrives at the proper season. A seed does not become a tree overnight. The moon does not skip phases. Spring never argues with winter. Everything unfolds according to its nature. Silence allows us to remember this forgotten rhythm. One of the greatest tragedies of modern life is that many people cannot sit quietly with themselves for even 10 minutes, not because they lack time, because they fear what they might encounter. The Tao encourages courage of a different kind. Not the courage to conquer others, not the courage to accumulate more, but the courage to remain peacefully present with oneself. This quiet courage changes everything. Gradually, the mind becomes less reactive. Thoughts lose their ability to dominate. External noise no longer dictates internal peace. The need for constant entertainment begins to fade. Simple moments become deeply satisfying. Morning light through a window, the sound of wind moving through trees, a warm cup of tea, a slow breath, a genuine conversation. These ordinary experiences regain extraordinary beauty. The Tao teaches that life has never lacked wonder. It is our overcrowded attention that prevents us from seeing it. When we begin protecting empty space instead of fearing it, something remarkable happens. Silence no longer feels empty. It feels full, full of clarity, full of awareness, full of presence, full of peace. And in that quiet space, where nothing needs to be added and nothing needs to be proven, we rediscover something modern life has almost convinced us to forget. The deepest forms of happiness rarely arrive through more noise. They arrive when the noise finally falls away. Living without force. The forgotten wisdom of Wu Wei. Among all the teachings of Taoism, few have been misunderstood more than the principle of Wu Wei. It is often translated as non-action, leading many people to believe it encourages laziness, passivity, or refusing to take responsibility. Nothing could be further from its true meaning. Wu Wei does not mean doing nothing. It means doing nothing that goes against the natural flow of life. It is the art of acting without unnecessary struggle. It is moving with wisdom instead of constant force. Imagine watching an experienced sailor crossing the ocean. He does not fight the wind. He studies it. He adjusts the sails. He understands the currents. Instead of exhausting himself trying to overpower nature, he learns to cooperate with it. This is Wu Wei. Now imagine another sailor who becomes angry every time the wind changes direction. He pulls harder, fights the waves, shouts at the weather, and blames the sea for refusing to obey his plans. His exhaustion grows, not because the ocean is against him, but because he refuses to work with reality. Many of us live exactly like that second sailor. We try to force conversations that are not ready to happen. We chase opportunities that clearly no longer belong to us. We hold tightly to relationships that have naturally reached their end. We refuse to adapt when life changes course. Then we wonder why we feel constantly drained. The Tao teaches that exhaustion is often a sign that we are fighting life instead of flowing with it. This does not mean every obstacle should be avoided. Sometimes persistence is necessary. Sometimes courage requires standing firm. But Wu Wei asks a deeper question before every action. Am I acting from wisdom or from resistance? The answer changes everything. Modern culture glorifies force. Force your way to success, force productivity, force confidence, force happiness, force results. People begin believing that every goal must be achieved through relentless pressure, yet nature consistently demonstrates another path. Consider how a tree grows. It does not strain every second to become taller. It simply responds to sunlight, rain, changing seasons and time. Its growth appears effortless, yet over decades it becomes strong enough to withstand storms. This effortless growth is not weakness, it is perfect cooperation with natural law. Human beings often sabotage themselves by trying to force outcomes before their proper season. A young professional becomes impatient because success has not arrived after 1 year. An artist abandons meaningful work because recognition comes slowly. Someone begins meditation expecting complete inner peace after a few days. Parents become frustrated because personal growth in their children takes years rather than weeks. The Tao reminds us that everything meaningful develops gradually. Rushing natural processes rarely improves them. It usually damages them. Think of a gardener. No amount of pulling on a plant will help it grow faster. In fact, Pulling destroys it. The gardener waters, removes weeds, provides sunlight, and then waits. Waiting is part of the work. This idea has almost disappeared from modern life. Technology has conditioned us to expect immediate results. Messages arrive instantly. Food arrives quickly. Entertainment begins with one click. Information appears within seconds. Gradually, impatience becomes our default state, but the deepest transformations of the human heart still obey ancient rhythms. Trust develops slowly, wisdom develops slowly, healing develops slowly, character develops slowly, inner peace develops slowly. Wu Wei teaches us to respect this rhythm. Another aspect of living without force involves our relationship with control. Many people quietly believe they can control almost everything if they simply work hard enough. They try to control how others perceive them, how quickly opportunities appear, how every conversation unfolds, how every future event should happen. This constant need for control creates endless anxiety. Why? Because reality refuses to cooperate. The Tao invites us to distinguish between influence and control. You can influence your habits. You cannot control every outcome. You can prepare carefully. You cannot guarantee success. You can speak honestly. You cannot control how someone interprets your words. You can love deeply. You cannot force another person to love you in return. Understanding this distinction immediately reduces unnecessary suffering. There is freedom in accepting the limits of our control. This freedom is not defeat, it is wisdom. Wu Wei also transforms leadership. The greatest leaders rarely dominate every situation. Instead, they create environments where people naturally flourish. The Tao Te Ching says that the best leaders are those whose presence is almost invisible. When the work is complete, the people say, "We did it ourselves." Such leaders do not constantly seek recognition. Their confidence does not depend on applause. Their influence comes from quiet consistency rather than loud authority. The same principle applies within families. Parents often believe they must control every decision their children make. Eventually, they discover that constant force produces either rebellion or dependence. Guidance works better than domination. Example teaches more than lectures. Patience often changes hearts more effectively than pressure. The Tao favors gentle influence over aggressive control. Water becomes the perfect teacher once again. Nothing appears softer than water. You can place your hand inside it without resistance. Yet over centuries, water shapes valleys, smooths stone, and nourishes entire civilizations. Its power lies precisely in its gentleness. Modern society frequently mistakes gentleness for weakness. The Tao recognizes it as enduring strength. People who constantly prove themselves often carry hidden insecurity. People who constantly argue often seek certainty. People who constantly compete often fear not being enough. Wu Wei invites another way of living. You no longer need to force respect. Character quietly earns it. You no longer chase admiration. Authenticity naturally attracts trust. You no longer manipulate circumstances. You simply respond wisely to whatever life presents. One of the clearest signs that someone is practicing Wu Wei is the absence of unnecessary urgency. Urgency and importance are not the same thing. A surgeon performs critical operations with calm precision. Panic would only increase mistakes. Likewise, a peaceful person handles serious responsibilities without allowing inner chaos to dominate. Calmness becomes a competitive advantage. Clear thinking emerges where emotional turbulence subsides. Another forgotten practice is knowing when not to act. Modern culture praises immediate reaction. Respond instantly, defend yourself immediately, correct every misunderstanding, win every argument, express every opinion. The Tao often recommends waiting, not because delay always solves problems, because clarity frequently arrives after emotion settles. Many conflicts continue only because two emotional people insist on speaking before either has truly understood. Silence can become an action. Waiting can become wisdom. Stillness can become strength. Wu Wei also changes how we understand ambition. The Tao does not condemn achievement. It questions obsession. There is nothing wrong with building a meaningful career, creating beautiful art, growing a business, learning new skills, serving others. The problem begins when identity becomes attached to outcomes. Then every failure becomes personal. Every setback becomes humiliation. Every delay becomes unbearable. Wu Wei frees us from this burden. We give our best effort, then we release the result. This mirrors the farmer planting seeds. He works diligently, then nature completes what effort alone cannot accomplish. Many of life's greatest gifts arrive the same way. Friendships, love, wisdom, opportunity, insight. They often appear when we stop desperately chasing them. This is one of the great paradoxes of Taoism. The tighter we grasp, the more life slips away. The more gently we hold, the more naturally life unfolds. Even our own minds respond this way. Have you ever struggled to remember someone's name? The harder you force your memory, the more impossible it becomes. Then, moments later, after relaxing completely, the answer suddenly appears. This small experience illustrates Wu Wei perfectly. Sometimes relaxation accomplishes what force never could. The same principle appears in creativity. Writers stare endlessly at blank pages. Musicians struggle through difficult compositions. Scientists wrestle with impossible problems. Then they step away, take a walk, sleep, spend time in nature. Suddenly the solution arrives, not because they stopped caring, because they stopped forcing. The subconscious often continues working when conscious effort rests. Nature understands rhythms of activity and recovery. The Tao encourages us to do the same. Perhaps the greatest lesson of Wu Wei is this: life is not a battle to dominate. It is a relationship to participate in. Every sunrise demonstrates effortless order. Every changing season reflects perfect timing. Every flowing river reveals patient strength. Nature never hurries, yet forests grow, mountains endure, flowers bloom, birds migrate. The moon completes its cycle. Everything happens without unnecessary force. Human beings alone often insist on exhausting themselves by resisting this rhythm. The forgotten wisdom of Wu Wei gently calls us back to patient action, back to natural timing, back to quiet confidence, back to trust. When we stop forcing every door to open, we begin noticing the ones that were already waiting. When we stop fighting every current, we discover that life has been carrying us farther than struggle ever could. And perhaps this is the deepest secret of inner peace. The strongest person is not the one who pushes hardest against the world. The strongest person is the one who has learned how to move with it. Returning to your original nature, the peace that was never lost. After exploring simplicity, acceptance, silence, and Wu Wei, we arrive at the final teaching, the one that quietly gathers all the others into a single understanding. It is perhaps the most profound lesson Taoism offers, yet it is also the easiest to overlook. You do not have to create inner peace, you have to uncover it. The Tao teaches that beneath all fear, ambition, comparison, anxiety, and endless striving, there exists an original nature that has never been damaged. It is not something you earn through years of discipline, nor is it a reward reserved for the wise. It is already there, waiting beneath the layers of conditioning that life gradually places upon us. Imagine a clear mountain spring. If a storm passes overhead, mud is stirred from the bottom and the water becomes cloudy. Looking at it, someone might believe the spring has become permanently dirty. But the Taoist smiles. He knows the water itself has not changed. It only needs stillness. As the mud settles naturally, clarity returns without effort. The human mind is remarkably similar. Most people believe they are their worries, their fears, their anger, their regrets, their successes, their failures, their social identity, their reputation, their past, their future. Yet the Tao gently asks, who are you beneath all of these? Before society told you who to become, before comparison entered your life, before you learned to measure your worth through achievement, before fear taught you to hide parts of yourself, who were you? This is not a question that demands an intellectual answer. It invites direct experience. Children often reveal glimpses of this original nature. Watch a young child exploring a forest. They are fascinated by leaves, insects, stones, and sunlight. They are fully present. They are not wondering whether they appear successful. They are not comparing themselves to others. They are not calculating how much recognition they will receive. Their attention naturally rests in the moment before them. Of course, adulthood brings responsibilities that children do not carry. The Tao does not ask us to become childish. It invites us to become childlike again, curious, open, flexible, able to experience life without the constant burden of self-consciousness. One reason inner peace seems so distant is that modern identity has become incredibly complicated. People introduce themselves through careers, achievements, political opinions, financial status, followers, degrees, possessions. None of these are inherently wrong, but none of them represent the deepest self either. The Tao reminds us that everything external changes, careers end, money comes and goes, beauty fades, technology evolves, opinions shift, fame disappears. If your identity depends entirely upon changing things, peace will always remain fragile. The sage instead anchors identity in something deeper, simply being alive, simply participating in existence, simply expressing one's true nature. This quiet confidence cannot be taken away because it never depended upon external approval in the first place. One of the greatest obstacles to returning to our original nature is comparison. Comparison is one of the least questioned habits of modern civilization. People compare incomes, appearances, relationships, homes, vacations, careers, intelligence, even spirituality. The mind constantly asks, am I ahead? Am I behind? Why do they have what I don't? The Tao observes something nature demonstrates every day. The pine tree never competes with the bamboo. The eagle never envies the deer. The river does not wish to become a mountain. Each fulfills its own purpose. Only human beings abandon their own path while obsessing over someone else's. Comparison quietly steals the joy of becoming who you actually are. The Tao encourages us to discover our own rhythm instead. Some people bloom early, others bloom later. Some lead quietly, others create, others teach, others heal. Others simply offer kindness wherever they go. Every expression of authentic life has value. No flower apologizes for blooming in its own season, neither should we. Returning to our original nature also means releasing unnecessary masks. Many people spend enormous energy trying to become the version of themselves they believe others will accept. They hide vulnerability, pretend confidence, suppress curiosity, conceal compassion, avoid honesty for fear of rejection. Eventually, they become exhausted. Maintaining a false identity requires constant effort. Authenticity, by contrast, requires remarkably little energy. The Tao teaches that what is genuine naturally aligns with the flow of life. What is artificial constantly requires maintenance. This is why many successful people still feel empty. Their achievements may be real, but the identity performing them may not feel authentic. Peace begins when appearance and reality gradually become the same, when there is no longer a need to perform, only to live. Nature never performs. The moon never tries to appear brighter. The ocean never competes with the sky. The wind never seeks applause. Their existence alone is enough. Perhaps human beings were meant to remember this. One of the most beautiful Taoist insights is that softness is closer to our original nature than hardness. Babies enter the world soft, flexible, curious, and open. As fear accumulates, many adults become rigid. Rigid opinions, rigid expectations, rigid identities, rigid emotional defenses. Yet nature repeatedly shows that flexibility survives where rigidity breaks. During storms, stiff branches snap, flexible branches bend. Human resilience follows the same principle. The peaceful person adapts, learns, changes, forgives, begins again. Not because life is easy, because resisting change eventually becomes more painful than embracing it. Returning to your original nature also transforms your understanding of success. Modern society often defines success through accumulation. More money, more recognition, more influence, more possessions. The Tao quietly asks another question: how peaceful is your heart? This question cannot be answered by anyone else. A person living in a small cottage may possess extraordinary peace. Another living in luxury may quietly suffer every day. External circumstances matter, but they never fully determine inner freedom. True wealth includes the ability to enjoy simple moments, to sleep peacefully, to love sincerely, to laugh without pretending, to remain calm when circumstances change. These qualities cannot be purchased. They grow naturally from alignment with the Tao. Gratitude becomes another doorway back to our original nature. Not gratitude forced through positive thinking, but gratitude born from direct observation. The warmth of sunlight, clean water, fresh air, friendship, a meaningful conversation, the ability to breathe deeply, the opportunity to begin again. The more we notice ordinary blessings, the less dependent we become upon extraordinary experiences. The Tao repeatedly points toward ordinary life because that is where reality actually exists. Many people postpone happiness until life becomes perfect. After the promotion, after retirement, after financial security, after finding the perfect relationship, after solving every problem. The Tao smiles gently at this endless postponement. Life is happening now, not someday. Peace is practiced today, not after everything improves. This understanding changes the way we experience time itself. The present moment stops feeling like an obstacle on the way to a better future. It becomes life, the only life we will ever actually experience. Every past moment once existed as the present. Every future moment will eventually arrive as the present. The Tao therefore invites complete attention here, now. Another forgotten truth is that enough is a sacred word. Modern civilization rarely says it. There is always another purchase, another milestone, another upgrade, another comparison, another achievement. Desire has no natural ending. The Tao offers freedom through contentment. Contentment does not destroy ambition. It purifies it. You continue growing, learning, creating, serving, but no longer because you believe happiness exists somewhere beyond the next accomplishment. Instead, your actions become expressions of fullness rather than attempts to fill an emptiness. This is one of the greatest transformations possible. You stop asking life to complete you. You participate in life because you are already complete. The Tao calls this living in harmony. Harmony does not eliminate sorrow. The sage still grieves, still feels disappointment, still experiences uncertainty, but beneath every changing emotion remains an unshakable trust. A trust that life moves in rhythms larger than individual understanding. A trust that every season eventually changes. A trust that forcing rarely improves what patience can heal. A trust that simplicity reveals what complexity hides. A trust that silence speaks when noise finally ends. As these truths mature within us, something extraordinary begins to happen. The endless race slows. Comparison loses its power. Approval becomes less important. Fear softens. Ordinary mornings become beautiful again, the sound of birds before sunrise, the smell of rain approaching, a quiet cup of tea, the laughter of someone you love, the feeling of breathing deeply after years of rushing. These moments were always here, only our distracted minds kept overlooking them. Perhaps this is why the oldest Taoist masters rarely described enlightenment as acquiring something new. Instead, they spoke of returning to simplicity, returning to balance, returning to stillness, returning to humility, returning to the Tao, because the peace we spend our entire lives searching for was never hidden somewhere beyond the horizon. It was patiently waiting beneath the noise, beneath the striving, beneath the fear, beneath every identity we borrowed from the world. The basics of inner peace have not disappeared. Humanity has simply stopped practicing them. Yet they remain available to anyone willing to slow down, listen deeply, and walk gently with life once again. The river still flows, the mountains still stand, the wind still whispers through the trees. Nature has never forgotten the Tao, and neither, deep within your heart, have you.